Hi, this is Tyson, and today we're going to be looking at how to use the fetch APIs in React Native. I've taken my people.js file that I had before and I converted it to JSON, so this will be easier to use in a server. And to get a server running, we're actually going to use this NPM module called HTTP server. You can see here that it has a pretty awesome picture of a turtle riding a rocket. So I mean, that says it all, really, I think. So to get started with it, you have to npm install it globally, and then you have it. So then you can just do HTTP server and then the port number you want to run it on. So we're going to open it up on port 5005. So now if we go here and we go to people.json, this will give us our JSON file that we can hit, programmatically via an API. So if we go into our with people.js file that we had before, instead of importing people like we were before, we're actually going to fetch the people from the server. So in the constructor here, I'm actually going to add some state to our component. So first of all, we're going to add this dot people, or this dot state equals an object with people, and to begin with, people is going to be an empty array. So now I can say this dot state dot people, and this will be empty right now because there's no people fetched yet. So what we need to do next is add a lifecycle hook. We're going to do a component did mount. So after the component mounts, we want to actually fetch our data. So we're going to fetch, and we're going to take our URL, and we want to fetch this JSON file. So fetch returns a JavaScript promise, and a JavaScript promise, basically, it's a good way to deal with things asynchronously in JavaScript. So it's basically, it says sometime in the future this function is going to resolve, and when it resolves, it gets a then function. So then is what you do with it after it resolves. So then we have our resolution. So then we can call res.json. That's going to parse our the response into a JSON format, and then we'll be able to actually use it. So then at that point, we're going to get back our people is the response. So then we can call this dot set state and pass our people into it. And see it resolved and our people were attached to it. But what happens when you get an error? Like server errors are pretty common in API. So whether it's because you hit the wrong endpoint or because the server went down or whatever, like there's always reasons why this may or may not resolve. So let's say we are calling peoples instead of people. So in that case, this actually broke our app because it doesn't exist anymore. So what we want to do is actually catch that. So we're going to do catch at the end of our promise chain, and that'll give us an error, and then we can set our state with the error message. So we'll actually have an error that's allowed here. And we'll also add is loading. This will just be a boolean that will let us know whether or not we're still loading the state, or we're still loading the people. So at this point it would not be loading anymore because it's resolved, and at this point it would not be loading anymore because there's an error. Okay, so now we would want to handle our error at this point if there is one. So we would say this dot state dot error. So there is an error. We want to do something different. So we'll actually make an error component real fast, and we'll pass in the we'll just say oh no. And we'll import error at the top here from our components. And then we actually need to create a component, so we're just going to call it error.js. And for that, we'll need to import React from React. We'll import styled for our styled components from styled components /native. And we'll just have this function called error that takes a props. And we'll have a wrapper and error message. And then props children, that's the whatever's inside of your component that you're rendering. So then we'll export that. And then we'll have to define what wrapper and error message are. So wrapper, that would be a styled component, so like a styled view. Flex it all the way, and we'll give it a background color of red. And then we'll take our error message, be a styled text, and we'll make sure that it's readable, so we'll make that the color be white. Alright, so now there was an error and it says oh no. That's what we wanted to happen, so that's good. Now let's go back to our with people and we'll fix this URL. And so it loads now, which is perfect. So as you can see, you can use promises to, especially for things where you're wanting to do anything that happens and you want to know when it's occurred, but you don't want to wait around for it. So you'll obviously in JavaScript you don't have the synchronous nature that you have in some other programming languages. So something like promises is really handy for that, because then you can do your thing, and then when it finally resolves, you can actually use it. So we're using the fetch API, fetching our content, and then setting it on our state.